idea of digital. I want to start, before I get to proposing what I think digital transformation should be and what it isn't, and what other things might exist in that realm. I want to unpack digital with you a little bit, because there's a couple of things that are really interesting about the word digital. Number one, again, is the number of broad definitions that are allocated to it. Number two is the fact that my kids never talk about digital. I love this meme that went viral after Stranger Things season 3 aired on Netflix recently. Jonathan, one of the characters in Stranger Things, is a photographer, and he regularly visits what we would know, because many of us can still remember a time when you needed to develop celluloid film, but he visits this red room, which is a dark room, to go and deliver developed film, and he does his kind of investigations and so on and so forth. And this post went up on Reddit, obviously by a younger person than me, to say, in Stranger Things, we frequently see Jonathan going inside this room to refine his photos or something. I don't quite understand what happens here. He puts the photo in water, and somehow this makes it more clear. An example is in the first season when he refines Barbara's photo and he sees a little bit of the Demogorgon. Is this an old film technique? And if so, what is it called? You don't hear young people talking about digital devices. You don't hear young people talking about digital strategies or digital businesses. It's only us that kind of talk about digital, right? And even when we do, it seems to me that we mean very different things. So what do I think we should mean? What do I think we should be talking about when we talk about digital? I think that there are three things that kind of fall under the category of digital, that fall under that word, that I think we sort of need to think about. The first thing is kind of the most technical definition, or the sort of what I think it originated from, is that we are making machines, and have been making machines since the mid-20th century, that can process data faster than we ever could before, and that can store data, and that can communicate that data over networks. And we call those cool machines computers, and they are fundamentally digital in their underlying technology. And the computing technology that has evolved since then at such like rapid exponential rates, that hardware is digital. It's digital technology. Not all technology is digital, all right? A wheelbarrow is technology, but it's not digital, clearly not, right? But all digital hardware is technology. Hope that makes sense. But then there's a second part to the definition of digital, and that's the software piece, right? Because hardware is great. My phone is great, but it's useless. It's a glorified paperweight if I don't have software on it that allows me to access it in exciting and interesting and innovative ways, right? So hardware plus software, very much a core part of the digital definition. But I think there's a third thing that we mean when we say digital. And I think that third thing that we mean is solutions or products or experiences that are only possible because of the existence and the relationship between digital hardware and software. Without those two things, there are experiences that you and I have on a daily basis, the one we're having right now as an example, that would be impossible without the combination of digital hardware and software. There are things that we do without even thinking about it that a couple of years ago were indistinguishable from magic, right? Like literally magic. The fact that I can order groceries from an intelligent Google Home that sits in our living room, and that those deliveries will magically arrive at my door a couple of days later. That's indistinguishable from magic. That's magic, right? And digital enables that experience. So I think when we talk about digital, so digital marketing or digital strategy or digital conferences or digital disruption, we're talking about the things that are uniquely possible because of the existence and the relationship between digital hardware and software. Okay. So when we talk about businesses like this, which we talk about all the time, I think that's the part we don't speak about enough. We talk about the enormous amounts of money that they're responsible for creating. We talk about the lives that they impact. We talk about the industries that they disrupt. But what I don't think we talk about enough is the the things that were previously indistinguishable from magic that they make possible. I often talk to specifically clients in the banking and telco industry about how what Airbnb and Uber have done that's truly disruptive is not make cool apps that allow us to kind of create value from unused inventory and seats in cars or rooms in houses, but what they do is they monetize trust. They use data to create an instantly valuable relationship between two complete strangers. And that is astonishingly powerful in its implications for business. Because my engagement with most service providers, and many of the banks and telcos I referenced earlier on are an example of that, begins from a position of mistrust and moves, if I play my cards right, over the years, into a place of trust. I have to earn the right to be innocent, right? I'm guilty until proven innocent. Whereas, kind of with Airbnb and Uber, we are creating connections based on the reliability of the data that we pay for, support, and the combinations of those data in unique ways using hardware and software that create an experience that was unimaginable before, impossible before. So I think that's what we mean when we say digital. But what do we mean when we say transformation? Now that's another interesting one, because like digital, it's a word that is sometimes stigmatized and has a variety of different definitions. If I told you that going into the lockdown period, I decided that I was going to try and use the time as best as possible to engage in a body transformation project, come out at the end of it looking all buff and strong and whatever else. And I said to you that I applied myself to it every day, and this didn't happen, by the way, at all. I basically have eaten my way through lockdown so far. But and I got to the end, and I said, "Well, here it is. Here are the results." And then I stopped. All right. You would be unsurprised to learn that a couple of months later, that as much as I transformed in that limited period of time, I was back to my original self. Maybe with some underlying structural differences or some kind of fundamental health metrics that are in a different place. But ultimately, I would look very much similar to how I did when I got back in, when I started my lockdown transformation journey. The thing about transformations is they're not projects. They don't just happen in limited timeframes. Transformation implies a commitment to a new path, um, a fundamental shift from the way that we do things now to the way that we will do things to be relevant, sustainable, meaningful, impactful, valuable into the future. Transformation is a big word. It's like it makes a big promise. It implies a significant change, a radical reorientation of intention and application, right? And this is the analogy that I sometimes use to illustrate this, and it's maybe not the best analogy because we could certainly poke logical holes in it. But I use this. I saw somebody, another consultant, describing transformation as the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Same DNA, same animal, just completely different functional set after that after that change, after that evolution, after that metamorphosis. This kind of just disproves the point that I made around continual change. But the point being is that when we think about transformation in business, often we just think about like a faster caterpillar or a skinnier caterpillar with more legs, right? Like we don't actually transform. We embellish, or we add prosthetics, or we try and support the thing that actually really needs to fundamentally change to continue to be relevant, to continue to survive in a new environment. So this is why I think we should stop talking about digital transformation. Because I think that 97% of businesses that say they are digitally transforming probably are not. And even those that are trying their level best seem to be, and the data seems to support this, are really struggling to succeed in this space. Because this is the thing with transformations. These are the characteristics of an authentic transformation. Number one, it's a serious long-term commitment, to use the body transformation example, or any transformation, if it's an economic transformation or cultural transformation, any transformation implies a very sincere, very deliberate, very authentic, long-term commitment. Now, in any organization of significance, if you do not have a leadership team that understands the implications and supports and personally embraces a serious long-term commitment, it's going to be very difficult for you as any other agent in that business to affect the same level of change. And that's just because of power structures. That's just because of hierarchies. But one of the great enemies of innovation in the world today, in the world's biggest corporates, and there's much is written about legacy and muscle memory and the way we've done things before and so on and so forth. But one of the things we don't speak about enough is that the people who are the most able to affect significant change in the organization, the most powerful, have the shortest timelines for value creation. So if I'm 62 years old and I'm the CEO of a multinational and I'm due to retire in 3 years and my remuneration and my bonuses are tracked on that timeline, I'm naturally going to be less inclined to worry about where the business will be in 10 to 15 years than where it'll be in 3 years or 2 to 3 or 1 to 3 years. And so there's this kind of interplay or tension between what the business needs to continue to exist, beyond the custodianship of the most powerful people in the organization right now, and what those people's major priorities are. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to say about transformations is a sincere organizational transformation relies extremely heavily on committed leadership with a long-term value creation mindset, and a long-term value creation mindset that maybe even exceeds their tenure in leadership, their moment in the sun. People that are willing to build value for the generations that will come afterwards, or the tiers, or the successes of of their time in that position. And I think that's for obvious reasons, that's a really, really challenging dynamic. Now, back to my original point about macro and net florist. When you think of organizations that were really poorly positioned for lockdown, but have done well, often it's got a lot to do with leadership that was committed to innovating in ways that made them very uncomfortable, that allowed for an element of risk or experimentation. And taking on some of that responsibility and accountability for the risk is a big part of what makes a successful organizational transformation possible. The second thing about transformations is that, I hope I've gotten this point across already, is that they just don't work in the form of projects or initiatives. The idea of a digital transformation project for me is an oxymoron. Okay, that's why we've seen stats like 70% of digital transformation initiatives fail. They fail because they're initiatives and not a shift in values, principles, mindsets, or behaviors, which is the next point. When we think about what makes an organization adaptable, it's not the technology that they have. It's not the product that they make or offer. It's not the headquarters that they occupy. It's not how many people work for them. It's how central change is as a value, as a priority in that business. And for that to be true, you have to have a kind of a healthy disrespect, cynicism for the successes of your past. You need to be willing to question actively and always the things that worked before. There really is no greater enemy or barrier to innovation than the thing that made you successful in the past. There's absolutely no guarantee that that will work into the future. We know this, right? And then the last thing about transformations is that the outcome of this thing must be significantly different to what you started with. We're talking about a radical and demonstrable and measurable change in direction, change in organizational orientation. So when I think about digital transformation as kind of a spectrum, the bad news is that for a lot of organizations, or maybe a lot of individuals that work in organizations, that are saying, "Why? Like, I'm not convinced we have that kind of leadership. I'm not convinced that we are prepared for that kind of change. We have a culture that's risk averse, where people can't make decisions, where it's very difficult to take initiative, where performance is measured on inputs and not outputs." Yeah, I, the good news is, so the bad news is digital transformation is going to be really tough in that environment. That's going to be hard, right? But the good news is that I don't think that's your only option. I don't think digital transformation is the only way to leverage digital hardware, digital software, and then those uniquely digital solutions or experiences to stay in play, to survive. There are other options. Okay. And the more I've researched this and the more time I've spent with this, I think I've developed, or I think we've kind of come up with 4 possible alternatives. One of them being digital transformation, but 4 alternatives that I think any organization, regardless of where it is in its lifespan, regardless of where it is in terms of geography, regardless of where it is in terms of kind of immediate competitive threat or resilience, can employ in order to stay alive, in order to evolve, in order to adapt. And I think there are 2 questions that every leader must ask themselves sincerely if this is a journey that they're going to go on, and if they're going to pick one of these 4 strategies to engage with. So let me introduce these 2 quickly. So I think the 2 metrics are on the x-axis on this graph. We've got time frame, but I don't just mean time frame. I mean time frame for value realization, the return on investment expectation that leadership has. If leadership is expecting a return on investment in 2 to 5 years, then you've got certain options that are available to you, but only really those options. But if leadership is looking to build value in the long term, and I've put the relatively arbitrary 5 to 10 plus year time frame in here, but I mean, in modern business, 5 years is a long time. But certainly the research that I'm conducting at the moment and the case studies that I'm examining, these timeframes appear to be less arbitrary than they might seem up front. It's just interesting that the vast majority of executive stakeholders sit in the 2 to 5 year time frame in terms of return on investment or value creation, rather than the longer time frame. The y-axis is what I call threat to business model, or if you want to use a buzzword, we can say disruptability, your propensity to be disrupted. So what makes an organization disruptible? So now a lot of people think, well, if we're a very analog business, if we are still on Windows 7, if we use a lot of paper, those things do not make a business. There might be symptoms of something else. They might be indicators of something else going on, but those are not the things we should be focusing on. The things that make you disruptible are more to do with how information flows through the business, right? How accessible, organized, and shareable information is. It has a lot to do with how people make decisions. There's been a lot written and said that argues that hierarchies aren't good and flat business structures are good and better for innovation and disruption. I'd argue that that's not true at all. I think hierarchies are not just useful, but very powerful. And not just powerful, but I would argue a more natural state for us. I think we like order and structure, and I think most of us that aren't mavericks are, kind of enjoy being in a structure of sorts. What makes a hierarchy work is if the hierarchy relates to levels of accountability. If it relates to how much power I have and where my parking spot is and how likely I am to have a corner office, then hierarchies are less effective. But if it relates to how much accountability I have, where the buck stops, then they're super powerful. And if only government worked in the same way, we would see astonishing results, right? So, so, so I believe that these are the two key things that leaders need to consider when they pick a transformation or a digital adaptation strategy. And I think that the core question underneath that is, how long do I want to be around for? Like, if I asked any business leader, and I do this often in workshops or in facilitations, or when we do master classes, or when I work with MBA students, or the question I ask, because it seems like such a simple question on the face of it, is how long do you want to be around for? How long do you want your business to be around for? Like, any self-respecting person is going to answer forever. Nobody's going to go, oh, yeah, however long makes sense, or however long I can get value from it, or whatever it might be. You're going to say, like, I want my business to be around. I want to be part of a business that is around for. We've been bred to believe that that is in and of itself a metric of success. Business that just lasts, right? And there's some parts of that that are important, right? Legacy and sustainability and impact. But ultimately, if you are pretending like you want the business to be around forever, but you're measuring performance exclusively on a monthly or quarterly basis, then what you're saying or what you intend and then what you're measuring are kind of very misaligned. And this is the story of most corporates, right? How long do you want to be around? We're too big to fail. We want to and will be around forever. We are. Yeah, I was going to say names, but I'll keep those to myself. But the behavior, the performance measurement and management, the autonomy of the business, the information flow, those things don't match up. Certainly with a business that is designed from the ground up to be resilient, sustainable, and adaptable. See, I believe what most businesses are doing when they say they're digitally transforming is actually something called digitization. So instead of an inside-out reorientation of business direction and value creation over the long term, with change at the core of everything that you do, with technology as an enabler, thinking about resilience, thinking about adaptability, thinking about autonomy. I think what most of us are doing is we're bolting digital layers, either at the customer interface or their employee interface, onto existing business models. Okay, and that I think is what many of us call digital transformation, but what I don't think is an accurate rep. Now, here's the trick with digitization. If the existing business model is rock solid, is sound, okay, then you can plug digital layers onto it, and all it will do is improve customer experiences and improve employee experiences and amplify those existing processes or systems. But if the existing business model, the legacy business model, is kind of fundamentally dysfunctional, putting digital on top of that will not fix the problem. Digital is not a magical band-aid for business problems. It's sold that way, but it really isn't. In fact, quite the contrary. Putting digital layers onto broken business models just amplifies them. It just makes them worse, right? It's like companies that used to come to us when I worked at Cerebra and said, people are complaining about us because of Twitter and Facebook. And I'd say, no, people are complaining about you because you did a crappy job. It's got nothing to do with Twitter or Facebook. Those digital platforms have just given them a public soapbox to broadcast their unhappiness. That's what's changed. So digitization and outside in layers of digital experiences, interfaces, or services on a legacy business model, not a bad strategy if that business model is sound. And in the long term, continually doing that will kind of naturally evolve the business into a similar place that you would have if you kind of committed to transformation. But the condition, this is the condition, is that the business model, that core central business model, must be sound. One of my favorite examples here is a business called Costco in the States. Costco is a business that survives and thrives in the midst of one of the most disruptive sectors and one of the most disrupted geographies in the last 5, 10 years, right? Retail in North America. And I think they've done an astonishing job of adding digital layers and digital experiences, e-commerce, onto their existing, very sound, tried and tested, rock solid, watertight business model. And they continue to survive despite the level of disruption that they're faced with on a daily basis. And I think that's a remarkable, I don't know that they'll be around forever, but it's a remarkable testament to have been as successful and have grown and have adapted as much as they have in the midst of that environment at this time. All right. Then we've spoken about digital transformation, so I don't want to go into that into too much detail, but you'll see that I think there is a subtle difference between these two. And I think we need to acknowledge that subtle difference. And I think a lot of it, oh, by the way, digitization can realistically be done in products or projects or initiatives in limited time frame interventions, but digital transformation, it fails if that's what we do. Digital transformation is an attitude. Digitization is an addition, if you like. All right. Okay. So what if you are a highly disruptible business, and as a leader, you desperately need to see a return on investment in the relative short term? Well, then I think your option is something called digital innovation, right? Which is literally seeking to create new revenue streams or new opportunities for value creation, either in adjacent sectors, by kind of even an example like Vodacom's core business has been a cellular network provider, but fiber is a new piece of technology, a new technological, or at least was a new technological frontier that they had to make a play in because it's so core to their promise to their customers. That's an example of innovation. Discovery and their bank is an example of innovation. It's adding a new revenue. For a lot of those examples, though, it takes a fair amount of time and a lot of investment to realize value from them. So that's why it could take anywhere up to 2. I mean, if it's taking longer than 5 years to realize value from that kind of initiative, then maybe there's something wrong with the way that it was designed, or that innovation is ill-timed, or there's not enough market demand, or there's no product market fit, or whatever it might be. But ultimately, I think that innovation is a great opportunity if you don't want to mess with your existing business model, or if your existing business model is so disruptible that it can't be fixed. It's kind of broken. It's on its way out. Let's say, for example, you run a business that's in a highly disintermediated or disintermediatable space, and you know that you kind of you maybe have like 5 years of runway left. Well, then rather than just like dismantling the thing, squeeze every last bit of value out of it and then rely on the new innovation, the thing that you either build or acquire. That's another strategy here is innovation through acquisition, all right? That you acquire in order to sustain you beyond the extinction of the legacy business that is dragging you down, right? But we also do see a lot of businesses failing to acknowledge when that core business, that thing that they're emotionally attached to, the thing that they've been doing that way for a very long time, the nostalgia overwhelms their practicality, and they can't, to use a very visceral image, stop flogging the dead horse. Okay. And then I think the fourth realm, which is kind of exciting, and there are some really interesting examples of this, but is this idea of self-disruption, self-imposed disruption. What I say to my clients often is that, imagine there is a room somewhere in the world filled with highly talented, well-funded, extremely enthusiastic, passionate people who are trying to solve exactly the problem you solve for your customer, but in a completely interesting and new way. And then the next thing I say is that room probably exists, and those people are probably the competition you should be thinking about, right? Vodacom shouldn't be thinking about MTN. Maybe, F&B shouldn't be thinking about Standard Bank. Be thinking about that room. That's your competition, certainly in the 5 to 10 year time frame, right? And then the last thing I say to them is, well, why? What stops you from owning that room? Maybe that should be a room that you built with people that used to work for you. Maybe you should have deployed a battalion of your most talented individuals, your most forward-thinking and disruptive individuals into an autonomous, well-funded, independent unit specifically to design the business that is ultimately going to cannibalize your value proposition. This is a very viable, really brave, and I think really important consideration for businesses that know that there is a high level of threat to their existing business model, but also acknowledge that it's going to take quite a long time for them to realize value from that. You almost treat it like a brand new startup that is kind of externally funded, and you know that it's going to be some time before it breaks even or realizes value. But I think this is an extremely viable strategy for many businesses that are finding themselves in the high threat to business model, high level of disruptability space. That magical question of what is the most interesting way to fix the oldest problem that we solve for our customers is, I think, a really important question for everybody to ask. The really sad truth of the disruption space is that, if we think about the organizations that have been completely deplatformed by disruptive startups, I'm convinced that most of those organizations, most of those big incumbents had the talent in their business to do an even better job of creating a competitor. And yet the only reason they weren't able to do so is because of bureaucracy, because of being trapped in the red tape of kind of a typical corporate structure. And that's when corporates become, professional extinguishers of talent. That's a really sad place for us to be in. So this is how I believe we should be thinking about digital transformation. This is how I think we should maybe recalibrate our priority set when it comes to deciding what type of strategy we're going to employ to leverage digital hardware, digital software, and those digital experiences, solutions, and products for a completely new approach to adaptability and resilience into the future. So that is everything I wanted to share with you tonight. I hope that it's started you thinking. I hope that it's planted a few seeds of intrigue, and I hope that it's maybe got you wanting to go research and question and discover a couple of new ideas and new topics around this. I do want to quickly stop sharing this, and at the same time, I do want to apologize for the technical issues that we experienced, and I am sorry. I hope to do a better job of that in future, but I really do appreciate your patience and your time. I see that there's a couple of little comments in the chat section. I imagine that they are all okay. You are muted. You are muted. You are muted. You are muted. Okay. And then just had a convo earlier. Thanks, Prezan, about self-disruption. Thanks for the chat. Really agree with your view. Well, great. You get the Noddy badge for this evening's webinar. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your attention. I really do appreciate your time. Let us all hold thumbs and hope that that tonight will bring good news from an economic and social perspective. Please do reach out if you want any more clarification on any of the points that we covered. I promise that the next time you get an email about a webinar, that I would have done a better job of researching the technology and hopefully not foul it up for the first 20 minutes. But thank you so much. Good to see your faces, and we will chat to you soon.